There is just no question that Stop, Question, Frisk has saved countless lives. And we know that most of those lives saved, based on the statistics, have been black and Hispanic young men. If murder rates over the last 11 years had been the same as the previous 11 years, more than 7,300 people who are alive today would be dead.
That was New York Mayor Michael Bloomberg this afternoon adding a hypothetical body count to his forceful defence of the stop and frisk policing tactic. His remarks came after a federal judge ruled the policy violated the constitutional rights of minorities and called for a federal monitor to oversee broad reforms. For more now, we're joined by African-American Studies Professor Jelani Cobb, contributing writer for The New Yorker, and of course my colleague Ari Melber, co-host of The Cycle. Professor Cobb, given that in 88% of cases, the individuals who've been stopped and frisked have been let go without an arrest, without even a ticket, is it not fair to say that we've become too accepting of profiling as part of the cultural life of this country?
That is absolutely the concern here. And I think one of the most important things that Judge Scheindlin said in her ruling was that if you have so many people who are not even being given a ticket, then it really brings into question the basis for which you found them suspicious in the first place. And it seems very basic and very plain logic, very simple, but it's also very important and is easily missed in this conversation. And so if we're talking about this, if we're talking about the NSA, if we're talking about the kind of creeping ideas around civil forfeiture and the legal system, this is all around the idea of profiling someone and really denying them due process and finding an end run around due process.
Ari, Mayor Michael Bloomberg says, and I'm quoting him, "Stop, Question, Frisk has saved countless lives, most of them Hispanic and African American." Is he right, therefore, to justify the practice?
Well, the judge said that if he were right, it would not matter in the same way that, as she writes, coerced confessions might help you get convictions, but they're unconstitutional. Internment is considered illegal today, but may add to the quantum of safety in certain neighborhoods. So number one, out of the ballpark. Number two, there's a lot of evidence that you have macroeconomic national factors driving crime down. That, of course, connects with Eric Holder's work today, which you were reporting on. And just to pick up on one point the professor made, under the traditional law, there's a very high standard to search someone, the Fourth Amendment requires. That was lowered for emergencies where you thought you saw a gun. That was an exception, essentially. What we saw in New York, this is what's important for people to understand as we digest this ruling, what we saw is that exception, that lower standard, become the rule. And so when that was applied, over 500,000 searches last year, majority against minorities, what we found when you actually found guns, the very thing that was used to trigger the exception in the lower standard, 1.1% of these searches produced guns among African Americans. Higher, by the way, 1.4% among white New Yorkers who were searched far less.
It's ludicrous.
And so that goes from, well, is it 50%? Is it not even? No, it's down to 1%. This is an abomination, and that's what the court ruled.
Professor Cobb, the tragedy of Trayvon Martin's death, do you think that some of these things that we've seen with Attorney General Eric Holder today and now with this ruling by the judge, is this perhaps in due course going to be seen as some substantive legacy for that young man's life?
Yes, I absolutely think so. I think that this will be a turning point in the way that we think about these issues. For one, in the ruling today, we saw there were 3 specific references, well, actually one oblique reference. The judge made reference to a hoodie, saying that, if someone's wearing a hoodie, they shouldn't automatically be suspicious. And then she quoted directly from that speech that President Obama gave when he talked about the Zimmerman verdict. And then finally, she made a reference to a column that Charles Blow wrote in the New York Times about Trayvon Martin. So it was very clear that she was tracking this to what was going on in events in Florida. And also when we saw the speech from Eric Holder following this, he actually said that he was going to be more aggressive on these issues.
And I must add briefly that this is the whole point. This is not a stop and frisk policy. It is a racial profiling policy. That's what the court held. That's what we should call it. That's why it's illegal.
And I wish we had more time, but we don't. Ari Melber, Professor Jelani Cobb, thank you. We'll be right back.